The crystal chandeliers of Vittorio's cast a warm, golden glow across the dining room, their light dancing off silk tablecloths and polished silverware. The air was thick with the aroma of expensive wine, fresh basil, and simmering sauces that had been perfected over generations. This wasn't just a restaurant. It was a cathedral of power, where deals worth millions were sealed over courses that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Vincent Cardone sat at his usual corner table, positioned perfectly so he could see every entrance, every exit, every face that walked through those doors. At 52, he was still the most feared man in the city, his reputation built on 3 decades of calculated violence and unwavering control. Tonight, he had reason to celebrate. The $5 million deal had finally closed. $5 million in clean money that would flow through his legitimate businesses, expanding his empire into territories his rivals could only dream of touching. Marco, his underboss and oldest friend, sat to his right, raising a glass of Barolo that cost more per bottle than most people earned in a week. His lawyer, a nervous man named David who had kept Vincent out of prison on more than one occasion, sat across from him, relief evident on his pale face. The negotiations had been brutal, but they'd won. They always won. The waiter approached with practiced silence, a young man who knew better than to make eye contact for too long. He set down Vincent's signature dish with reverence. Lobster risotto, the rice perfectly al dente, swimming in a sauce enriched with butter and cream, topped with generous shavings of black truffle that had been flown in from Italy that morning. It was comfort and power on a plate, a reminder that Vincent Cardone could have anything he wanted, whenever he wanted it. Vincent picked up his fork, the silver gleaming under the chandelier light. This was his ritual, his moment of peace before returning to the endless chess game of survival that defined his world. He brought the fork toward the tender lobster, savoring the anticipation of that first bite. And then the world exploded into chaos. The kitchen doors burst open with a crash that made every head in the restaurant snap around. A cleaning cart careened through the entrance, slamming into a nearby table and sending spray bottles, rags, and supplies rolling across the expensive carpet. Maria Santos, a woman in her mid-40s wearing a faded blue janitorial uniform, stumbled after it, her face twisted in pure terror. "Don't eat that!" The scream cut through the refined atmosphere like a knife through silk. 30 conversations died instantly. Forks froze midair. Wine glasses hovered at lips. The entire restaurant became a tableau of shock, every eye fixed on the cleaning woman who had just committed the unthinkable sin of disrupting Vincent Cardone's dinner. Maria's arm shot out, pointing directly at Vincent's plate, her whole body trembling. Her cleaning belt, loaded with bottles and brushes, jangled as she moved. Her hair had escaped from its ponytail, wild strands framing a face flushed with fear and desperation. Vincent's bodyguards moved with trained precision. In less than 2 seconds, 4 guns were drawn and pointed at Maria's chest. Diners ducked behind tables. A woman screamed. Waiters pressed themselves against walls, trying to become invisible. But Vincent himself remained perfectly still, his fork suspended inches from his mouth, his dark eyes locked on the cleaning woman with the intensity of a predator evaluating prey. "Give me one reason," Vincent said, his voice dangerously soft. "Why I shouldn't have you removed permanently." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. Everyone in that room knew what removed permanently meant. This woman had maybe 30 seconds left to live, and she had to know it. Her whole body shook like a leaf in a storm, but she didn't run. She didn't look away. She stood her ground, even as Marco gestured sharply to security, even as the weapons trained on her heart didn't waver. Because I saw what they put in your food, Mr. Cardon. Her voice cracked, barely above a whisper, but it carried through the silent room. I saw everything. Vincent studied her face with the same attention he gave to business contracts worth millions. She was nobody, invisible, just the cleaning lady who emptied trash and mopped floors after the important people had finished their important business. He'd probably walked past her 100 times and never registered her existence. But something in her terror felt real, authentic, not the calculated performance of someone trying to disrupt his evening or the desperate lie of someone seeking attention. He raised his hand, a single gesture that froze his men in place. Guns remained pointed, but fingers eased off triggers. "You have 60 seconds to explain," Vincent said, each word measured and cold, "before I decide whether you leave here in a body bag or handcuffs." Maria's eyes darted toward the kitchen, then back to Vincent. Her chest heaved as she struggled to breathe, but she forced the words out. "I was cleaning the prep area 30 minutes ago. I saw them. I saw what they did to your plate." Vincent's jaw tightened. The fork in his hand felt suddenly heavy. Around the room, his men exchanged glances. This was either an elaborate setup or something far more dangerous. Either way, someone was about to die tonight. He slowly lowered his fork, setting it down with deliberate care. The soft clink of silver on porcelain sounded unnaturally loud in the suffocating silence. "Marco," Vincent said without taking his eyes off Maria, "lock down this restaurant. Nobody leaves, nobody." Marco moved immediately, barking orders into his phone. Security rushed to cover the exits. Confused diners protested, but one look from Vincent's men silenced them. Vincent stood, his 6-foot frame unfolding from the chair with the grace of a man who'd spent a lifetime commanding rooms through presence alone. He walked around the table until he was standing directly in front of Maria, close enough to see the panic in her eyes, close enough to smell the industrial cleaner on her uniform. "Start talking," he said, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "And this better be the truth, because if you're wasting my time." Maria swallowed hard, her throat working visibly. "It was the new sous chef, the one you hired last month. He put something in your food, something that would make it look like a heart attack." The words landed like bombs. Vincent's expression didn't change, but everyone who knew him recognized the stillness that came over him. It was the calm before the storm, the moment before Vincent Cardon decided who lived and who died. And tonight, someone had just tried to poison the most dangerous man in the city. The question was whether the cleaning woman standing before him was his savior or his executioner. Vincent gestured toward an empty chair at his table, a movement that sent ripples of shock through the restaurant. Maria hesitated, her eyes widening at the unprecedented invitation. Cleaning women didn't sit with Vincent Cardon. Nobody sat with Vincent Cardon unless they were important, powerful, or about to die. "Sit," Vincent repeated, his tone making it clear it wasn't a request. Maria lowered herself into the chair, her cleaning belt clinking softly against the wood. Her hands trembled in her lap as Marco moved closer, his weapon still visible beneath his jacket. The other diners remained frozen, too terrified to move, too curious to look away. "How long have you worked here?" Vincent asked, his dark eyes never leaving her face. 12 years, Mr. Cardon, always the night shift." Maria's voice was steadier now, though her hands still shook. "I clean after everyone goes home. The kitchens, the dining rooms, the offices upstairs. And in 12 years, how many times have I actually looked at you, really seen you?" The question hung between them. Maria swallowed. "Never, sir. People don't see janitors. We're like ghosts. We're there, but we're invisible. We see everything, but nobody notices us. Vincent leaned back in his chair, a flicker of recognition crossing his features. He'd built his empire on being underestimated, on appearing to be just another businessman while orchestrating an empire of violence and control beneath the surface. He understood invisibility as a weapon. "Tell me exactly what you saw," he said. "Every detail, and don't leave anything out." Maria closed her eyes for a moment, gathering herself. When she opened them, her voice was firmer. "It was around 7:30. I was cleaning the industrial dishwasher in the prep kitchen. That's when I saw him come in." "The sous chef, Thomas Rivera?" "Yes, sir, but he didn't come through the side entrance where the kitchen staff usually enter. He came through the back door, the one by the loading dock, and he was sweating, nervous. He kept looking over his shoulder like he expected someone to be watching." Vincent exchanged a glance with Marco. The back entrance was monitored, but it was also the least visible point of entry to the kitchen. "I knew something was wrong," Maria continued. "The way he moved, the way he kept checking around, so I ducked behind the shelving unit. I don't know why, but I hid." "Instinct," Vincent said quietly. "Keep going." He pulled something out of his jacket, a small glass vial, amber-colored with a medical label on it. I couldn't read what it said from where I was, but it looked like something from a hospital or pharmacy. Maria's hands clenched in her lap. "Then he went to the prep station and started making your dish himself, the lobster risotto." Marco interjected, his voice sharp. "The head chef always prepares Mr. Cardone's meals personally, always." "I know," Maria said. "That's why I kept watching. It was wrong. Everything about it was wrong." She took a shaky breath. He put on gloves, the kind surgeons use, not regular kitchen gloves. Then he opened that vial and added 3 drops into the risotto. He stirred it very carefully, making sure it was mixed in completely. After that, he took off the gloves and threw them in the hazardous waste bin. Vincent's jaw tightened. Why would a chef need a hazardous waste bin? "Exactly what I thought, Mr. Cardone. Then he made a phone call. I heard every word." Maria's voice dropped to barely above a whisper. "He said, 'It's done. He'll be eating it in 20 minutes. Natural causes, just like you wanted.'" The silence that followed was absolute. Even the background murmur of frightened diners had faded away. Vincent sat perfectly still, processing the information with the cold calculation that had kept him alive for 3 decades in a business where most men didn't survive 3 years. "Why?" Marco demanded suddenly, stepping closer. "Why risk your life for him? You don't know him. You don't owe him anything." Maria's eyes glistened with unshed tears. "My daughter, Sophia, she's 16. She works part-time as a hostess here on weekends, saving up for college." Vincent's expression shifted slightly, a crack in the armor of his composure. "Last week there was this drunk customer," Maria continued, her voice thick with emotion. "He wouldn't leave Sophia alone, kept trying to touch her, saying terrible things. She was terrified." She looked directly at Vincent now, meeting his eyes. "You were here, you saw what was happening, and you had him thrown out, banned permanently. You even had Marco walk Sophia to her car to make sure she was safe." Vincent remembered. A nothing incident, barely worth his attention. Just another drunk being handled by his staff. He'd intervened only because the man's behavior was disrupting the restaurant's atmosphere. "You didn't have to do that," Maria said. "Sophia is nobody to you, just another employee's kid, but you protected her anyway. You made sure she was safe." Her voice cracked. "So when I saw what they were doing to your food, I couldn't just let you die, not after you helped my daughter." Vincent felt something shift inside him, an unfamiliar sensation he couldn't quite name. In his world, loyalty was bought with money or enforced through fear. But this woman, this invisible janitor, was risking everything out of simple gratitude. It was a currency he'd forgotten existed. He turned to Marco. "Call Antonio, get the head chef out here, now." While Marco made the call, Vincent studied Maria with new appreciation. She'd saved his life tonight, and in doing so had reminded him of something he'd lost along the way, something human. Antonio arrived moments later, his white chef's coat pristine, his face confused and concerned. "Mr. Cardone, is something wrong with the food? Where's Thomas Rivera right now?" The head chef blinked, thrown by the question. "Thomas? He left about 10 minutes ago, said there was a family emergency, his mother in the hospital or something. He left right in the middle of service, which was strange, but—" "And you didn't think that was unusual enough to mention?" Antonio paled. I suppose it was, but he seemed genuinely upset and— Vincent held up a hand, silencing him. He looked at Maria, then at the untouched plate of risotto still sitting on his table, steam no longer rising from its surface. The timeline matched perfectly. Vincent stood abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. "Marco, send a team to Thomas Rivera's apartment. I want him found within the hour." He looked down at Maria. "You're staying with us until this is verified. If you're lying, you know what happens." Maria nodded, her face pale but resolute. "I understand." Vincent pulled out his phone and dialed. "Get the plate to my private lab. I want a full analysis of every ingredient, and I want it yesterday." He paused, looking at the risotto that should have been his last meal. "Looks like someone wants me dead badly enough to spend 6 months planting an assassin in my kitchen." He met Maria's eyes one final time, seeing in them the kind of courage that couldn't be bought or taught. The kind that came from knowing what was right and doing it anyway, regardless of the cost. "Come on," he said. "We're moving this upstairs to my office. And Maria," he paused at the edge of the dining room, "thank you for my life." The words felt foreign on his tongue, but they needed to be said. Because tonight, Vincent Cardone had learned that the most dangerous people in a room weren't always the ones with power. Sometimes they were the ones nobody saw coming. 30 minutes later, Vincent's private office above the restaurant had transformed into a war room. Maria sat on a leather couch that probably cost more than her annual salary, still wearing her janitorial uniform, surrounded by men with guns. The contrast wasn't lost on her. Yesterday she'd been invisible. Tonight she was at the center of a storm that could get her killed. Vincent paced behind his massive mahogany desk, phone pressed to his ear, his movements controlled but tense. Marco stood by the window overlooking the restaurant below, also on his phone, coordinating the search. The air was thick with cigarette smoke and tension. Marco hung up first, his expression grim. "Boss, we got a problem. Thomas Rivera's apartment is completely empty. No furniture, no personal items, nothing. The landlord says he paid 6 months' rent up front in cash. The whole thing was staged." Vincent's hand tightened around his phone, but his face remained impassive. A ghost, he was never real. He ended his own call and turned to face them. Professional setup. This wasn't some amateur hit. The door opened and Dr. Chen entered, a thin man in his 60s carrying a leather briefcase. He'd been Vincent's personal toxicologist for 15 years, the man who'd saved his life twice before when rivals had tried more subtle approaches than bullets. "Mr. Cardone." Dr. Chen set his briefcase on the desk and pulled out a report. "I've completed the preliminary analysis of the food sample. And tetrodotoxin, extremely pure grade. It's a neurotoxin found in certain species of pufferfish. Dr. Chen's expression was grave. "This isn't something you can buy on the street. This is pharmaceutical grade, probably sourced from Japan or specialized laboratories." English Chen, what would it have done? Death would occur approximately 4 to 6 hours after ingestion. The symptoms would mimic cardiac arrest perfectly. Chest pain, difficulty breathing, irregular heartbeat, then complete respiratory failure. Dr. Chen looked directly at Vincent. No standard autopsy would detect it unless they were specifically looking for exotic toxins. You would have appeared to die of natural causes. A heart attack brought on by stress and lifestyle. Marco swore under his breath. Vincent remained still, processing. Someone had planned this meticulously. 6 months of preparation, a trained operative placed in his kitchen, access to rare poisons. This wasn't just an assassination. This was something bigger. "Mrs. Santos," Vincent said, turning to Maria, "I need you to think very carefully. Did Thomas say anything else on that phone call? Any other details you remember?" Maria closed her eyes, trying to recall every word, every sound from that terrifying moment in the kitchen. He was nervous. His voice was shaking. He said something about, he said the old man will be pleased. And then he repeated it, like he was trying to convince himself. The old man will be pleased when this is done. The change in Vincent was instantaneous. His face went pale, and for the first time that night, Maria saw something she never expected to see in Vincent Cardone's eyes. "Fear the old man," Vincent repeated softly, almost to himself. Marco's expression mirrored his boss's shock. "It can't be, after 20 years. Vincent moved to the window, staring out at the city lights. When he spoke, his voice was distant, haunted by memories. 20 years ago, I took over this territory from Salvatore Russo. Everyone called him the old man. He ran this city for 30 years before I came along." Maria listened, afraid to move, afraid to breathe. She was hearing things that people died for knowing. "The story goes that I killed him," Vincent continued. "That I put a bullet in his head and dumped him in the river. That's what everyone believes, but the truth?" He turned back to face them. "I forced him into retirement, gave him a choice. Exile to Sicily with enough money to live comfortably, or a war that would destroy both our families. He took the exile, but he swore revenge. Made me look him in the eye and promised that one day he'd take everything from me the way I took everything from him." "That was 20 years ago," Marco said. "He'd be in his 80s now. Why wait this long?" "Because Salvatore Russo is patient, and because revenge is a dish best served cold." Vincent's jaw clenched. He's been planning this all this time. David, Vincent's lawyer, burst through the door without knocking, his face flushed. "Boss, I've been going through the records like you asked. 6 months ago, right around the time Thomas Rivera was hired, there were 3 other new hires across your operations." He spread documents across the desk. "A driver for your transportation company, an assistant in your accountant's office, and a dock worker at your shipping warehouse. All hired within a 2-week period, all with perfect backgrounds, all vetted and cleared by our usual channels." Vincent studied the files, his mind racing. "It's not just an assassination, it's a coordinated takeover. He's got people planted throughout my organization." "We need to shut this down," Marco said. "Find these people. Interrogate them, figure out what they're planning." "No," Vincent's voice was sharp. "If we move too quickly, we tip our hand. Salvatore will know we're onto him and he'll activate whatever backup plan he has." He looked at Maria, an idea forming. "Marco's right about one thing, though. We can't just react. We need intelligence." Marco's expression darkened. "Boss, she's done enough. She's a civilian." "She's a liability," another bodyguard added. She knows too much. Vincent held up a hand, silencing them. He approached Maria, studying her with the same intensity he'd shown in the restaurant. Mrs. Santos, right now you're in danger. If Salvator's people find out you warned me, they'll come for you. And they'll come for Sophia. Maria's blood ran cold. My daughter, she's home alone right now. Vincent was already pulling out his phone. Marco, send a protection team to Maria's address immediately. Bring her daughter here. Armed escort. As Marco made the arrangements, Vincent crouched down so he was at eye level with Maria. Your daughter will be safe. I give you my word, but I need your help. Anything, Maria whispered. You said nobody sees janitors, that you're invisible. That makes you the perfect asset. Vincent's eyes were intense. Tomorrow night, you go back to work at Vittorio's like nothing happened. You listen, you watch, you report everything you hear. We have 3 other plants in my organization. We need to identify them before they can strike. Maria's hands were shaking again, but this time it wasn't from fear alone. That's dangerous, Mr. Cardone, more dangerous than anything I've ever done. I know, and I wouldn't ask if there was another way. But you've already proven you're braver than most of my soldiers. Vincent's voice softened slightly. Can you do this, for Sophia, for both of you? Maria thought of her daughter, of the life she'd tried to build despite all the odds stacked against them. She thought of Vincent protecting Sophia when he didn't have to. And she thought of the invisible woman she'd been for 12 years, ignored and overlooked by everyone. Maybe it was time to use that invisibility as a weapon. Yes, she said, her voice steady now. I can do it. Let's catch this bastard. Vincent allowed himself a rare smile, one that held genuine respect. Then welcome to the team, Maria Santos. The door burst open again, and one of Vincent's men rushed in, his face ashen. Boss, we got a problem. Thomas Rivera's body was just found in a dumpster in Brooklyn. Single gunshot to the head, execution style. The room went deathly quiet. Vincent's expression hardened into something cold and lethal. Salvator's cleaning up loose ends. He knows we're onto him. He turned back to Maria one final time. This is your last chance to walk away. Say the word and we'll protect you and Sophia, but you'll be out. Maria stood up, straightening her spine despite the fear coursing through her veins. She thought of her daughter, of justice, of doing what was right even when it was terrifying. I'm not walking anywhere, Mr. Cardone. Let's catch this bastard. Vincent's smile widened, and for the first time that night it reached his eyes. Then welcome to the team, Maria Santos. Let's show the old man what happens when you underestimate the people you don't see. The next evening, Maria pushed her cleaning cart through the familiar hallways of Vittorio's, her heart hammering so hard she was certain everyone could hear it. The wire taped to her chest beneath her uniform felt like it was burning through her skin, a constant reminder of the danger she'd walked into. One wrong move, one suspicious glance, and she'd end up like Thomas Rivera, executed in an alley somewhere. But as she moved through the restaurant, emptying trash bins and wiping down tables, something remarkable happened. Nothing changed. The waiters brushed past her without a second glance. The kitchen staff ignored her completely. The hostess gave her the same polite nod she'd been giving for 12 years. To them, Maria Santos was still invisible, still just the cleaning lady who existed in the background of their important lives. She'd never been more grateful to be nobody. Maria worked her way systematically through the dining rooms, keeping her movements natural, her expression neutral. Vincent's instructions echoed in her mind. Listen, watch, report everything. Don't try to investigate. Don't take risks. Just be the janitor you've always been. It was nearly 9 o'clock when she reached the private dining rooms on the second floor. These were the rooms where Vincent's associates held their most confidential meetings, where deals were made and futures decided. Maria had cleaned them 1,000 times, had emptied ashtrays full of expensive cigar butts, and wiped wine stains from tables that cost more than her car. She was loading dirty linens into her cart when she heard a voice in the hallway. Male, speaking in hushed tones. Maria's hands froze for just a moment before she forced herself to continue working, moving slowly, methodically, like she had all the time in the world. Yeah, the boss took care of the Thomas situation. Shame about that. He was a good operative. The voice belonged to Carlos, the new driver who'd been hired 6 months ago. Maria recognized him now, a tall man in his 30s with slicked-back hair and an expensive watch. She ducked her head, focusing on the linens, but her ears were straining to catch every word. "Too bad that cleaning woman interfered," Carlos continued, his voice dripping with contempt. "All those months of planning blown because some janitor was in the wrong place at the wrong time." He paused, and Maria could hear him pacing. "Don't worry, we're moving to Plan B. The shipment arrives Thursday. Once we intercept it, Cardon won't know what hit him." Maria's blood turned to ice. She kept folding linens, kept moving, even as her mind raced. Thursday. A shipment, they had a backup plan. Carlos's footsteps came closer. Maria braced herself, certain she'd been caught, certain her racing heart had given her away. But he walked right past her, so close she could smell his cologne, his phone still pressed to his ear. He didn't even glance in her direction. She waited until his footsteps faded before releasing the breath she'd been holding. 2 hours later, Maria was in the administrative offices on the 3rd floor, emptying waste paper baskets and dusting desks. The offices were supposed to be empty this late, but as she approached the accounting department, she noticed a light still on in one of the cubicles. Jennifer Chen, the young accountant's assistant hired 5 months ago, sat hunched over her computer, her fingers flying across the keyboard. Maria moved quietly, pushing her cart past the cubicle, but her eyes caught the reflection on Jennifer's screen in the darkened window behind her. She was copying files, lots of them. A progress bar showed dozens of documents being transferred to a USB drive plugged into the computer. Maria bent down, pretending to pick up a piece of trash near the cubicle entrance. From this angle, she could see Jennifer's face, could see the nervous way she kept glancing toward the door, could see the sweat beading on her forehead despite the air conditioning. The progress bar hit 100%. Jennifer ejected the USB drive and slipped it into her purse. Then she muttered to herself, barely above a whisper, but Maria heard every word. "Once these transfer records are delivered, Cardon won't know what hit him." Maria's hand fumbled with a spray bottle and it clattered against her cart. The sound was like a gunshot in the quiet office. Jennifer spun around, her eyes wide, her hand instinctively moving to her purse. But when she saw Maria, her whole body relaxed. "Oh, it's just you, Maria. God, you scared me, working late." Maria forced a sheepish smile, playing the part she'd perfected over 12 years. See, always busy. You work late, too." Jennifer's laugh was nervous but genuine. She saw no threat in the cleaning woman before her. "Just finishing up some reports, you know how it is." She grabbed her purse and stood. "I'm actually heading out now." "Have a good night, Maria." "You too, Miss Chen." Maria waited until Jennifer's footsteps faded completely before allowing herself to tremble. 2 of them. She'd identified 2 of Salvator's plants in a single night. Carlos and Jennifer. Both of them had mentioned Thursday. Both of them had talked about something hitting Vincent hard. It was 2 in the morning when Maria finally met Vincent at the warehouse by the docks. Sophia was there doing homework at a makeshift desk, surrounded by bodyguards who treated her like she was Vincent's own daughter. When Sophia saw her mother, she rushed over, hugging her tight. "Mama, are you okay? These men won't tell me what's happening." "I'm fine, Mija. Everything's going to be fine." Maria held her daughter close for a moment before gently pulling away. "Go finish your homework. I need to talk to Mr. Cardone." Vincent was waiting in his office, Marco at his side. The moment Maria walked in, he could see the tension in her face. "You found something." It wasn't a question. Maria nodded and began to speak, detailing everything she'd heard, everything she'd seen. Carlos's phone call, Jennifer copying files, the repeated mention of Thursday and a shipment. Vincent's jaw tightened as he listened. When she finished, he pulled up files on his computer. Thursday. That's when my weapons shipment arrives from overseas. $8 million worth of merchandise coming in through my dock operation. Marco leaned forward. "And Raymond Torres, the dock worker we flagged. He's working the night shift Thursday. He'd have access to all the shipping manifests. Know exactly when and where that shipment's arriving." "It's not just about the money," Vincent said quietly. "It's about making me look weak. If someone can intercept my shipments, steal from me right under my nose, it tells every rival in this city that I've lost control, that I'm vulnerable." Maria surprised herself by speaking up. "Mr. Cardone, if I may." Vincent looked at her and she saw something in his eyes that she'd never expected to see. Respect. "Go ahead." "These people underestimated me because I'm a janitor. Nobody important." Maria's voice grew stronger. "Maybe we use that same tactic against them, make them think they're succeeding when really we're one step ahead." A slow smile spread across Vincent's face. "A trap. Let them think they're intercepting the shipment, but we've already moved it. Or better yet, we give them exactly what they're expecting, but it leads us straight to Salvator." Marco caught on immediately. "We move the real shipment Wednesday night. Bring it in early, secure it. Then Thursday, we fill those containers with tracking devices. When they steal it, they'll lead us right to the old man's doorstep. And once we know where he is," Vincent's voice turned cold, "we finish this permanently." He turned to Maria, and something in his expression softened. "Mrs. Santos, you've done more in one night than most of my intelligence network manages in a month. Your daughter gets that college scholarship I promised. Full ride, anywhere she wants to go." Maria felt tears prick her eyes, but she blinked them back. "Thank you, Mr. Cardone." Vincent's phone rang. His expression darkened as he listened. "When? How many?" He hung up, his face like carved stone. "There's been an attack on one of my warehouses on the south side. 3 of my men are dead, professional hit, military-grade weapons." The room went silent. The message was clear. Salvator wasn't waiting for Thursday. He was escalating, making his move now. "What do we do?" Maria asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Vincent looked at her, and in his eyes she saw the predator that had ruled this city for 3 decades. "We move up our timeline, and you, Maria Santos, might just save my empire the same way you saved my life." Wednesday night became a blur of controlled chaos. Vincent's crew worked with military precision, moving the real weapons shipment through a secured route while Maria maintained her cover at Vittorio's, feeding carefully crafted misinformation through her invisibility. She'd never imagined her life would come to this, a janitor turned spy playing a role in a war between titans. Thursday arrived with the weight of inevitability. The trap was set. The decoy containers sat at the dock, filled with GPS-enabled dummy weapons and a surprise that would lead them straight to Salvator Rosso. All they had to do was wait. Maria cleaned the restaurant that evening with her nerves stretched to breaking point. Carlos was there, more relaxed than she'd seen him all week, laughing with the other drivers. Jennifer had left early, claiming a doctor's appointment. Raymond Torres was at the docks, right where Vincent's surveillance team had confirmed he'd be. At midnight, Vincent's hidden cameras caught everything. 8 heavily armed men stormed the dock in coordinated formation, their movements professional, their weapons military grade. They neutralized the guards, Vincent's own men playing their roles perfectly, going down without real resistance. Within 12 minutes, the containers were loaded onto trucks and rolling out of the facility. Vincent watched from his command center, a repurposed office building 3 blocks from the docks. Maria stood beside him, still in her uniform, Sophia safely asleep in a back room under guard. Marco tracked the vehicles on multiple screens, the GPS signals pulsing like heartbeats across a digital map. "They're heading northwest," Marco said, "out of the city." "Ravenswood," Vincent murmured. "The old Russo estate." "I should have known." Maria watched the screens, barely breathing. This was it. After 20 years of exile, after 6 months of planning, Salvatore Russo had finally made his move. And he had no idea he was driving straight into Vincent's trap. "Boss," one of the tech operators called out. "We're picking up cell chatter. Carlos just called Jennifer. They're celebrating. Said the delivery will be at the estate by dawn tomorrow." Vincent's expression was carved from ice. "Then that's when we move. Maria, you've done more than enough. Get some rest." But Maria shook her head. "I want to see this through. I need to know it's over." Vincent studied her for a long moment, then nodded. "Then you'll ride with me, but you stay in the vehicle, no arguments." Friday's dawn broke cold and gray over the Russo estate. The property had once been magnificent, a sprawling mansion with manicured grounds, the symbol of Salvatore's power. Now it was a monument to decay, its windows broken, its gardens overgrown, its walls crumbling like the empire that had built it. Vincent's convoy surrounded the property in a vise of vehicles and armed men. 30 soldiers, all loyal, all lethal, all prepared to end this war permanently. The stolen containers sat in the courtyard, still sealed, still waiting to be opened and reveal Vincent's trap. Maria watched from the SUV as Vincent stepped out, Marco and his best men flanking him. He looked every inch the conqueror, walking across grounds that had once been forbidden to him, toward a confrontation 20 years in the making. The mansion's front door opened. And there, in a wheelchair oxygen tank at his side, sat Salvatore Russo. At 84, the old man was a ghost of the titan who'd once ruled this city. His body was frail, his hands spotted with age, his breathing labored. But his eyes burned with the same hatred that had sustained him through 2 decades of exile. "Vincent Cardone," the voice was weak but sharp. "I knew you'd come. Did you really think I'd let you live in peace after you took everything from me?" Vincent stopped 10 feet away, hands casually in his pockets, supremely confident. "You were finished, Salvatore, weak. The families were ready to tear you apart. I gave you an out. I let you live." An out, Salvatore's laugh became a coughing fit. When he recovered, his face was twisted with rage. "You exiled me. Made me watch from across the ocean as you built an empire on MY Foundation. For 20 years I planned this, trained operatives, planted them in your organization. You should be dead right now, Salvatore. A heart attack in your favorite restaurant. Poetic, don't you think? Except I'm not dead." Vincent's smile was cold. "And you want to know why? Because you underestimated a janitor. A woman you never would have noticed, never would have considered a threat. just like you underestimated me 20 years ago." Salvador's face contorted. "That cleaning woman, that nobody, do you know what she cost me? Years of planning, millions spent, the perfect assassination, ruined by some invisible." "That nobody was braver than any of your soldiers," Vincent interrupted. "She risked everything for what was right." "That's something you never understood, Salvador. Power isn't just about fear and control. Sometimes it's about honor." "Honor," Salvador spat the word. "You want to lecture me about honor? You stole those weapons you stole." Vincent cut him off again. "They're rigged to explode remotely, and your 3 plants, Carlos, Jennifer, Raymond, they're in FBI custody right now. Turns out I've been cooperating with federal authorities for months. They were very interested in your international weapons trafficking operation." Salvador's face went from red to white. You're bluffing." Marco held up a phone, showing a video feed. Carlos, Jennifer, and Raymond all in handcuffs, all being processed at a federal facility. "You see, Salvador, I learned something from you all those years ago." Vincent leaned in closer. "Never let revenge make you sloppy. You were so focused on killing me that you forgot to protect yourself. You can't do this." Salvador's voice cracked, desperation bleeding through. "I'm a made man. The families will come for you. The families already voted." Vincent's voice was final. "You've been retired permanently. This time there's no exile. There's no second chance." Salvador stared at him, the realization crashing down like a death sentence. "It was that janitor," he whispered. "That's what destroyed me. A nobody, an invisible nobody." Vincent straightened. "That nobody saw something wrong and did something about it, knowing it could cost her everything. That's more courage than you've shown in your entire life." He turned to walk away, then paused. "Oh, and Salvador, the FBI wants to talk to you about those international trafficking charges. I'm sure they'll be very interested in your operation in Sicily." Salvador's face twisted with impotent rage as federal agents emerged from the vehicles, badges gleaming. The old man had fallen, not with the bang of gunfire, but with the quiet click of handcuffs. 1 week later, Maria walked into Vittorio's wearing a tailored business suit, her hair professionally styled.